Hey everyone, it's Sarah here with Virtual Biz Partner, and I want to talk to you for a little bit about how I made the transition of working full time and replacing that income and working from home as a virtual assistant. And I just want to say hello to all of you watching this on the replay as well. I think you guys will get some great information out of this, especially if you're in the place right now where you're trying to get started working from home and replace an income from a job, whether it's part-time or full-time, or maybe you're just looking to make money working as a virtual assistant and not currently working. So I definitely have some tips for you. So if you know anything about me and my background, I first got started with my business back in 2011. But it was not the plan at all. I had gone to college for probation and parole. I was going to be a probation parole officer. That was the plan. And I think a lot of times we get these plans made up in our minds and we think life is going to work out a certain way, and then something totally different happens. That's definitely what happened with me, and that's okay. It can be okay for life to take a different path. But that was my plan. I was going to work in criminal justice, and I was really passionate about that. But at the time, I was working for a business doing bookkeeping. I was employed full time. I had been working in the office, and then at some point while I was there, I met my now ex-husband, but he then became my husband, and I was going to be moving. And so my boss at the time said, "Hey, I think you could do this job from home." I did bookkeeping for them and a few other little things. But he said, I think you can do this from home. And so that's what I started to do. We got set up where I could work remotely, and I would just go to the office one day a week. And that's really when the wheels started turning of, hey, if I can do this job from home, there's got to be other jobs I can do from home. And so I started kind of searching and trying to learn what I could do. Didn't really stumble across anything that piqued my interest. A lot of things that I felt like were scams or just data entry, things I didn't like. And so one day on Facebook, I learned of a virtual assistant. So most of you, probably already know of what a virtual assistant is. But if there's those of you that maybe want to work from home and there's like the direct sales and some of those businesses that you can get started with, but you don't really know what else you can do from home, you definitely want to check out working as a virtual assistant. And so if you're not familiar with that, what a virtual assistant is it's simply an individual that works remotely as an independent contractor. So you're not an employee, but you work as an independent contractor for another business doing tasks they need help with. And it can be a variety of things. You use your own equipment, and you set your own rates, set your own hours, that sort of thing. And most often people that get started as a virtual assistant do administrative type work. So research, editing, writing, formatting blog posts, things like that. And if you happen to jump on while I'm on here, I would love for you to say hello and just let me know if you're currently working as a virtual assistant or if you're wanting to get started. I'd love to know where you're at in your business right now. So anyways, now that I kind of explained what a virtual assistant is, back to how I made that transition, because that is a huge question people have for me. And so when I first learned of a virtual assistant off of Facebook, I started to Google it and just try to learn more about it, because it was totally new to me. I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know what the opportunities were. I didn't know what skills you need to know. Around that time, an article came out in a magazine, and it told me about a site called HireMyMom.com. I love HireMyMom.com. It's how I got my start. It's where I got my first 2 clients. So what I did was I just went on there and signed up. It was, I think it's about like maybe $30 for 3 months. I'm not sure if that's still the pricing. But what HireMyMom.com is it's a website where people go to list jobs that they want to hire virtual assistants for. And by the name, HireMyMom.com, it's assumed that many of the women on there are moms. So those people looking to hire realize that you're a mom and you have family, and you have other things going in your life. You're not just there to work for them 24/7. So I learned of the virtual assistant. I learned of that website, and at that point I just like stumbled my way through. I didn't realize it's something I could actually do as a business and do full time. So my plan was just to do virtual assistant work on the side of having my job. And I had told my boss, because since I did work from home, I really wanted to be transparent with him. I didn't want him to feel like I was taking advantage or anything. So I would do the work for him, get everything done, and then I would do my VA work. And so I just did it I hadn't had a raise in 5 years at that time. And so I kind of thought, oh, well, I'll do this work, I'll make some extra money, and then I'll figure out what I am going to do long term. And as I started doing the virtual assistant work, the first 2 clients that I had, I got 2 clients that kind of at the same time, or right within the first couple of weeks, I decided to, I definitely had lower rates when starting, but what I had kind of felt at the time was because my first clients were teaching me a lot of skills, I was okay with the lower rate. And since I was working the money, like it wasn't as important as those of you that really want to quit your job soon or need to make a certain amount of money. So I kind of took that as an opportunity to learn, and that was definitely a huge benefit to me. So if you're someone who is trying to get started as a virtual assistant, that is one thing I would suggest you do, is really start learning some of the general programs that are out there. Things like Google Apps, Zoom is a free conferencing program, Asana is a free project management program. Anything with, like I said, Google Apps, so the calendar, the documents, all of that, Gmail. You can even Google like free software programs to use, and just use those free ones. And so that will definitely give you a step up as you're trying to get more clients. So I just kept doing this work on the side and growing my skill set and learning all I could. And after about 6 months, that is when I learned enough about the virtual assistant industry and the online businesses that I was like, oh my goodness, this can actually be a real thing. I mean, I knew I was doing real work, but I mean a real thing as far as maybe this can be what I do and quit my job. So, but in the back of my head, I was still thinking about the probation and parole. Like I hadn't totally crossed that out of my mind yet. So anyways, I started doing some networking both for the virtual assistant work I was doing, but also locally, and trying to learn about the probation and parole officers that they hire and how often they hire and things like that. So if you remember, I'm doing the probation, or trying to learn about probation and parole, thinking that's what I'm going to do, really unhappy with my job, but still doing the virtual assistant work. So as I was doing the virtual assistant work and learning my skills, learning really great skills, I started raising my rates. So that's one thing you're going to want to do if you're doing this work now and you're doing it on the side. You definitely, as you're learning things, you want to be charging more. That could be getting new clients at the new rates. It could be raising rates with existing clients. That can look different for everybody. But definitely start to charge more as you learn more. And then what happened with me is I received letters that there were a couple openings. I received letters from the state of Missouri that there were 2 openings for probation and parole officers. And I had 7 days to reply if I wanted to interview or not. Because what happens if you don't respond, then they ban you from their state roster and you can't apply for state jobs. So in this 7 days is when things really changed for me. And I decided, okay, there is a button in my face that's really bugging me. I guess I'm just not going to worry about it. It's something on my computer. Hopefully you guys don't see it in the recording. But it's really distracting to me. So anyways, I had 7 days to decide. And I'm like, okay, I don't like my job. I'm doing this VA work. There's interviews for probation and parole, but here was the kicker. At the time, I was married. I had 2 stepdaughters, and my son was 2. I lived in a place where I had no family close, to help out with kids and stuff. And because I was working my job from home, my son had been home with me, and he would go to a sitter a couple days a week. And I was looking at, if I interviewed for this probation and parole and decided to go that route, my son would be in full-time daycare. And so I started weighing my options, and I was thinking, okay, I'm doing this virtual assistant work. I'm learning more. I really love it. Maybe I can make enough money from this to quit my job and just not pursue the probation and parole. And so that is what I did. So I would love for you all to comment watching this replay and let me know, what were you planning on doing? Most of us all had, I talked in the beginning, we have this plan of what we're going to do with our life. I'd love to hear what you thought you were going to end up being. But I'd also love to hear from you what do you want to do now? Do you want to be a virtual assistant? Maybe you want to start that way and then go a different route. So definitely let me know. I'm really curious to hear what you had planned to be and then what you ended up doing. And so after, I think it was about a year full time of doing the virtual assistant work on the side, I was then charging about $30 an hour for my VA work. And my job paid me, I was on salary, I would have to do up all the numbers, but it came out where the VA work actually paid me more. Even if you factor in like the benefits and that stuff, it didn't get a lot of benefits. And then if you throw in the flexibility, the freedom, you know, I don't have to go to the office that one day a week. I know a lot of you commute every single day. So what I did to really figure out if I could quit my job and do the VA, because like I said, I get this question all the time. And what people say to me is, how can I transition from my full-time job to being a virtual assistant and make that same income? Here's the thing. Do you really have to make the same amount of money? What I did was I created a spreadsheet of my bills and what I absolutely had to have to be able to quit my job, and came up with that number and realized like it didn't need quite as much money as I thought I did. And so that is a mistake that I sometimes see individuals make, is that, you know, maybe they're making $60,000 at their job, which where I live, like that's a really decent salary. Like most people don't make that, like the average person. And to make that being a virtual assistant, like you could do it eventually, but it's a lot of pressure. What if you only needed $30,000 instead of $60,000? Like that is so much more, it's going to be able to happen faster. And so then you can quit your job faster. So that's what I really want you to think about, is instead of looking at, well, how do I replace that full-time income? What do you actually need to replace? Figure that out. And then you can figure out, okay, you know, how many hours would I have to bill out as a VA, or, you know, how many clients would I need to replace that? So like I said, after about a year, like I was going to save up a certain amount of money. Again, I had this whole plan. I'm all about planning. And I was going to save up a certain amount of money before I quit. And then it was like 6 months before that, and I quit. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I did not have the client base needed to bring in the amount of money that I needed to pay the bills. Had a little bit in savings. Like I said, not the amount I wanted. I actually had a potential client that wanted me to work with them like a lot of hours, and it was going to make up that income. So I did kind of quit thinking that that was going to work out. And then after I talked with her, I found out she was basically wanting me to work for little money. When it got down to it, we started talking about the contract. So I'm not telling you to like quit your job and start working as a virtual assistant and not have the money part covered. But what that made me do is I just found the clients. Like I don't really like to use the word hustle, but that's basically what I did. I just wasn't worried. To me, there was no alternative. I was quitting my job. I was going back to being an employee was not an option. I had turned down the interviews for the state for the probation and parole, and this was what I was doing. I was going to be a virtual assistant working from home. So again, if you're thinking to yourself, or if you've asked someone, how do I transition, make that list of what you actually have to make to cover your bills. And then, you know, I see people in Facebook groups all the time talk about these backup plans. If you have a backup plan, that's because you think it might not work. You think you might fail. And if you think you might fail, there's a good chance you're going to fail. So if you're looking to do this, you need to have the attitude that it's going to work. It may not work the way you have it planned, but you're going to figure it out. You're going to get clients. You're going to do whatever you have to do to bring the money in and to take care of your family. And so that's what I did. Now, if I was to tell you how many clients they had or how many calls, or they, you know, I don't remember. That was just my attitude. And I got clients in no time. And I had, you know, no issue then making the amount of money I needed to cover those bills. So if you're like me, you're probably trying to plan out all these details. You're probably making it a lot more difficult than it has to be to quit. And what you need to do is figure out what you need to cover those bills And you need to have an attitude that I'm doing this, like there's no going back. I'm going to quit my job. Or if you're not working, then have the attitude like this is going to work, and make it work. And if you are surrounded by people that question you or doubt you or are negative, don't talk to those people. Find new people. I'm even very selective in like Facebook groups who I interact with, or the Facebook groups I participate in. People in my Facebook feed, I keep them as friends, but I unfollow a lot of people. People that I see post, because if I'm having a great day and I go on Facebook and the first thing I see is something negative, that like just it brings me down. Like I don't want to see that. And so when you're trying to start your business, you're usually really excited, you have ideas, and if there's somebody in your personal space, whether it's like actually in your physical house or if it's online or wherever, somebody that interacts with you and they're being negative, you need to get rid of it. Now, if it's like your spouse or somebody that lives in your house, you can't just like get rid of them. I'm not telling you to do that, but you do need to have a serious conversation, and you can hear them out and listen to maybe their concerns, but then let them know, especially if it's your spouse and they're like, well, how are you going to make this work? How is this a real thing? How are you going to make money as a virtual assistant? Then you need to let them know, like, here's the 3 things I'm going to do. Tell them, make a spreadsheet of your bills, figure out how much money you need to make. Let them know that it's going to work. You'll figure it out. You don't have a backup plan. And also maybe give it a time frame. So I like to tell people, try to get your first client in the first 3 months, and then a new client every month after that. Because again, if this is your spouse, they're thinking about your family, the income. Now, if they make plenty of money and you don't need your income, well, then it's going to be a lot easier. But I would say my aha moment and my turning moment was when I got those letters from the state, and I had this job opportunity, or possible job opportunity, it was an interview, to do what I thought I'd always wanted to do. And then I had a time limit on it, on how long to decide. And in those 7 days, I really, really, really weighed the pros and cons. And like I said, what it came down to is I didn't want to put my son in full-time daycare, and I needed the flexibility. I had to have it. It was non-negotiable, the freedom and the flexibility. So if you're looking to get started, take those tips. And as far as anything else, you don't need a website. You don't need social media profiles. You don't need all this fancy branding. You don't need a logo. It's going to be a waste of money. Like, if you have the money to spend, maybe, but I'm going to tell you not to. In my training, I tell my ladies not to spend money on that stuff yet. And then when they do, I tell them how to do it really inexpensively. And the reason is when you're first starting your business, your goal should be getting clients. That's it. Just get clients. Don't worry, and learning your skill, maybe improving your skill set on things. But you don't need to worry about all the fancy stuff that everybody else tells you need. And even information overload when getting started. I found a lot of information online, and a lot of it was conflicting. I did eventually find some good information to follow, and I stuck with that. So I'm going to tell you, listen to me. I am very straightforward. I don't put a lot of fluff and a lot of extra stuff in about what you need to start your business. I'm going to be very direct about how to do it. I'm also going to tell you what you don't need to do. And I will tell you that if you go looking online, you're going to find all kinds of information. So be very selective. Don't go listen to 10 different people. Pick 1 or 2 that you really connect with. If you don't like what I have to say, well, then go find somebody else. But if you love what I have to say, then check out my blogs, check out some of my freebies, my Facebook group, my training, all the things I have to support you, because it is really going to make a difference. And it's also going to feel good to not be giving attention to all these different directions. So if you are watching this replay and trying to quit your job and you're just stuck doing it, after you've listened to this, if you still have questions, let me know what they are. I would love to answer those for you. And like I said earlier too, I'd love to hear what you had planned to be when you were all grown up, and then what you really want to do now. Maybe even you haven't told anybody like what you really dream of share that with me. I'm going to cheer you on. I'm not going to tell you that you can't do it. I'm going to tell you you can, and would be so excited to learn what that is. And if this was helpful, if you think these tips would help anybody else you know that is trying to quit their job and trying to get started as a virtual assistant, then click share. I would love it if you would do that. So thanks so much. Let me know your questions and have a good evening. I'm going to go make a hungry 10-year-old dinner. Bye-bye.